Have you ever asked a guy how great they are at driving? They might say, "Yeah, I'm the best." When in reality, they might speed and they might not be the safest driver, so are they really the best? They say they're the master behind the wheel, but if they're driving like that, there's probably better drivers out there, right? Not all guys, just some. Sorry. But this is an example of an egocentric bias. So, you might be like, that's a tongue twister. It's a little bit of a big word for me. So, let me break it down for you. Ego stemming from the Latin term meaning I, and then we have centric being the point in which something revolves around, and then we have bias being our own judgments and our own beliefs that can sometimes just be deemed unfair. Now, this all gets put together and we get the term egocentric bias. So basically, this is just relying too heavily on our own point of view and our own perspective. And it's a type of cognitive bias, which is just a fancier term for the way we interpret things, an error in the way we interpret things. So after all I just said, you might be like, why should I listen to you out of all people on this planet? And I'm going to tell you why. It's because I did extensive research and I have provided the best information and the best examples in order for you to understand exactly what this is and how to combat it, because it is an issue. Egocentric bias is an ongoing issue in daily life that we don't even recognize. And it's, like I said, extremely important to minimize this. So that brings me to my first example. One of the many manifestations of egocentric bias, which is the spotlight effect, which heavily affects people with social anxiety, but you don't even have to have social anxiety to experience this. Almost everyone experiences. I promise you, you've probably experienced it once in your life. And this is just overestimating how observant other people are in our own life. So let me give you an example. You're walking and you might hear some laughing going on around you, and you're probably wondering, am I walking funny? Is my outfit weird? No, the answer is no. And this is because we can have some anxiety or self-consciousness, or honestly, it could be an enormous ego thinking that you're the main character in everyone's story, but in reality, it's probably not the case. They're probably focused on their own life just as much as you are. So, an article from Effective Eology talks about self-distancing, and this is a way that we can minimize this. So if we put ourselves in another person's perspective rather than our own, we can maybe help ourselves a little bit in a situation like that. So let's just say you're self-conscious about what you're wearing that day. Your outfit's mismatched, let's just say. And you think about all the people who have walked by you. You probably haven't remembered any of their outfits, so why would they remember yours? That's just a way to think about it in a more helpful manner. And that brings me to my next point, which is how it's making its way into business and marketing. Now let's take Champion, for example. They started to fall after they were on top, and then they just made their way to the bottom. And they worked with popular brands in order to build themselves back up. Now, the fact that they're so popular now can give them a little bit of an ego, and hence egocentric. But it can be tricky when your fame starts to build because you don't want to be in over your head. Companies should not unhumble themselves. They should not be too cocky because consumers specifically, do not like being thrown things at them and things shoved in their face. So it's better to not have a large ego and to just do humbling work. And a way to minimize this in business is just to look at yourself in your competition's eyes, or look at your competition in their perspective. An article by Growth Ramp talks about just being more self-aware. And if we do this, then it can create standardized fairness and just a more realistic perspective in general. And it can help us be more successful in our business rather than having too much of an ego and in turn failing. Which brings me to my final point, and it's just another variation of egocentric bias, which is false consensus effect. So this is just overestimating how similar other people's beliefs are to yours. It could be what you believe in, your values, how you behave, anything like that. So let me give you an example of this. You thinking that the political figure that you are most drawn to and that you are supporting is, they have the most support in the nation. So your candidate is, rising, when in reality it might not be the case. So another article by Effectiviology states why this might happen. So there's a lot of reasons, more than one, but one of the main reasons is just motivation. Like, you're motivated because you think that you have the common belief. You think that what you believe, everyone believes. And biased exposure. So that's just like talking to people who have the same point of view as you, and just not deviating and getting opposing views and only sticking to hearing the same ones around you. And then we have focus. So your own points. You only focus on that, and you only research that and are only familiar with that. So that's all you know. And then ways to deal with it. Obviously, there's more than one, but engage. So that can be talking to people with opposing views rather than just sticking to the same narrowed topics, and, expanding your horizons. And then you obviously have to compare the negative and the positive. So you can't just look at one side. You have to look at every side as a whole. And you have to do your research. Don't just look at your opinions. You have to look at the stone cold facts. You have to look at what is fact versus what is opinion. And that's just the truth. So by using debiasing technology, which is just to help improve your decision making and to slow down your reasoning, it's just all in turn going to help you not be so egotistical at the end of the day. And just to recap, I talked about the spotlight effect and how you think others view you, and egocentric bias and how it's in marketing and business, and false consensus effect, which is having the same beliefs as people, or thinking you have the same beliefs as people. So now you can see the negatives and why this is so important to stop it in its tracks. I gave you a bunch of examples on how you can combat this in your daily life, and it'll, at the end of the day, relieve stress, it'll relieve anxiety, and it honestly will humble you, and it'll help you with your decision making. So next time you're in a situation like any of these, look at it from a second point of view, not a first point of view. Look at it from someone else's eyes.